Boom, we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to the Nolan Hawkeye Anthony YouTube channel, and I thank all of you for being here wherever you may be, and of course, however you may be listening. Guys, let's talk about Hank Brown, the Auburn transfer quarterback that Iowa landed recently. He announced his commitment. Just trying to get the camera angle here right. He announced his commitment to play for the Iowa Hawkeyes. He is, of course, from the state of Illinois. He is from Tim Lester's hometown. So, I'm sure that Tim Lester had familiarity with him coming out of high school. I'm sure Tim Lester recruited him. You know what, guys? I can't find any article confirming that. I thought I read that he was from the same town in Illinois or wherever Tim Lester is from, which is why there was that familiarity. But I paused the video to see if I could find any information to certify that, because he also did go to Lipscomb High School in Tennessee. Anyways, I digress. Nonetheless, Iowa has landed the 6'4", 200-pound quarterback. He is a little thin, a little wiry, and I'm sure he will add a little bit of bulk, but his size, I think, is preferable. I was able, and I recommend that you guys do this. There's actually a lot of game film. Talk about the SEC being super popular. There are multiple YouTube pages that are dedicated to showing the highlights of Hank Brown. And as far as I can tell, they are Auburn fans that show the highlights of Auburn starting quarterbacks. And so I was able to see all of his throws versus New Mexico, some of his throws against Alabama A&M, and some of his throws in the Music City Bowl from last year. Originally, I thought that he had 4 years of eligibility remaining, but he has 3. This year, he was a redshirt freshman. I was right. This is from Hawkeye Source. Hank Brown and Tim Lester are from the same city in Illinois. Tim went to high school with Hank's parents. Good connection right there. So there you guys have it. As to what the Iowa Hawkeyes are getting with him, I think he is a prototypical pro-style quarterback. He is not the most athletic. His stats running the football in 3 starts this past year, he had 1 game with 2 carries for 12 yards, 1 game with 1 carry for -2, and then the other 0 for 0. He is mostly a passing quarterback. I think it's interesting to note, Hugh Freeze is known as kind of an offensive savant, if you will, and obviously felt really good about Hank Brown. He was originally coming out of high school committed to Liberty, where Hugh Freeze was the head coach, and then when Hugh Freeze got the Auburn coaching gig, he wanted Hank Brown to follow him there. Now, you can definitely make the case that, and I'm not super familiar with the situation, but a lot of times in coaches' first season, they just want to get guys that they're familiar with. So if they can take as many with them that they are familiar with from a previous team, that is what they will do, because they know that they're good guys, they're good team players and things like that. So as opposed to a situation where, he's been at Auburn for 4 years, they've won a SEC championship, and then he recruits Hank Brown. I think the situations are a little bit different, but still, obviously Hugh Freeze, given the circumstance that he was in, was good with Hank Brown and liked his talent. I think it says a lot that as a redshirt freshman, not that Auburn is a terribly good program at the moment, but I do think it says a lot that he was able to get starting reps. They were 5-7 this past year. As a redshirt freshman. I do think that says a lot, and he was probably under-recruited coming out of high school. I was looking to see he was offered by Illinois, Austin, PA, Eastern Kentucky, Liberty, obviously. Minnesota offered him. Pittsburgh offered him. So he actually wasn't, it doesn't look like he had an offer from Western Michigan coming out of high school. But he actually did have some decent offers, some Power 5 or Power 4 offers. Let me, I wrote this down. I'm going to give you guys the stats just to give you guys a comparison. So this past year, Iowa used 3 quarterbacks, and here are the stats for each quarterback. Cade McNamara had a passer rating, just passing the football score, of a 115.8 for the season. Just to give you guys, if you're not aware, and it's totally understandable if you're not, the average is around 120. I found some sources that say nowadays the average is closer to 130 or even in the mid 130s, but the predominant information that I found is that an average, what is considered above average, maybe is a better way to look at it, is anything above 120. Obviously, Cade McNamara was, regardless, below average. He's below 120, and he was below 130. His total QBR, which looks at every single snap and includes situational football, runs, decision making. It looks at the context of every single play and gives you a score. He had a 37.2. The average for QBR is a 50, which he was well below. He had 1,017 yards, 6 touchdowns, 5 INTs. Brendan Sullivan, 158.6 for a passer rating, so he's above average with that. But again, obviously, Iowa did not pass the football a ton with either him or Jackson Stratton. They seem to be far more willing to pass the football with Cade McNamara for whatever reason. He had a total QBR of 54. He had 344 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 INTs. So Brendan Sullivan was slightly above average in every category. And what did he play? 2-3 games. Jackson Stratton had a rating of 115.8, so he was slightly below average with his passer rating. He was slightly, by the smallest of margins, above average with total QBR of a 50.4. He had 219 yards, 1 touchdown, 0 INTs. Okay, here are Hank Brown's numbers. Hank Brown had a passer rating of a 173.6, which puts him well beyond average. Okay, he was above average in his 3 games. Now, again, I think it's worth noting that the 3 games that he played in this past year, only one of them was against what I would consider above average competition, or average to above average competition, as Arkansas was the only team. Okay, and he did struggle quite a bit in that game. But nonetheless, that's worth noting. But nonetheless, he had a 173.6 for passer rating. He had an overall QBR of a 43.4, which is kind of interesting considering how high of a grade he has as a passer. Just shows you how different the two numbers can be. His numbers were 403 pass yards, 6 touchdowns, 3 INTs, 62% completion percentage. So let me give you guys my thoughts on this pickup, okay? So let me start here. Tim Lester, his number one goal as a new offensive coordinator is to improve the talent and the depth on offense as a whole. Mainly at the quarterback position, as he is the quarterback coach. Okay, quarterback's coach. I have been on record as saying that he did that last year by immediately going and picking up Jackson Stratton, who coming out of high school had offers, was committed to Washington and came from a big school in the state of California, one of the best programs in the state of California. As a preferred walk-on, not even as a scholarship quarterback. Now, he'll probably be on scholarship moving forward, especially with all the transfers and James Razor moving to wide receiver, and now he's gone, yada, yada. Then, of course, he went and got Brendan Sullivan, which was a surprise get, and I think everything considered was not given the proper credit that it deserved last year. I mean, that was a mid to high caliber pickup out of the transfer portal. Grades that the recruiting services had for Brendan Sullivan were all mid-tier, 85, 5.6, not the highest, but considering this was a guy that was likely to be the starting quarterback for a Power 4 level program, albeit Northwestern, coming off of actually a much better season than most people anticipated, and a guy who had Big Ten experience, that was an under-the-radar pickup, especially he hadn't even had his first full season as offensive coordinator. Was it the biggest get? No, but it was a big get. It was a bigger get than I think it was given credit for at the time. Okay. As far as name recognition goes, it was not as big of a pickup as Cade McNamara was, because Cade McNamara came from Michigan, played in a Big Ten championship game, so on and so on. But still was a big pickup, okay? You fast forward, you have the full season. Actually, even before that, Deuce Hogan leaves. Joey Labus was already gone and had decided to. I can't remember if Joey Labus decided to. I had somebody comment in one of my comments that I guess about everything, which I thought was funny because it is so much to remember all of these things and be able to draw on it in a second. And I would say I'm a pretty intelligent guy. I have a master's degree, as you guys can see behind me, but it's a lot of information to have to remember. So all these details, and I think I actually remember a lot more details than most remember just to call off of memory, but I digress. It was either a few games before the end of the year last year, or the year before this most recent season, or right after the final game. Deuce Hogan was gone after Iowa's I think it was their spring game, or it was their first camp. He decided to leave. We can only speculate, but I think a lot of that had to do with Tim Lester being honest with him about his game, where he fit in Iowa's depth chart, and his evaluation of Deuce Hogan's game as a whole. And he was likely correct, as Deuce Hogan went to something Tech, Utah Tech, and his numbers were this past season were abysmal. And the room was already completely different. And then, you have this past year, James Razor gets switched to the wide receiver room, wasn't even a quarterback, which I think honestly was the right decision, although I always did like the upside and athleticism that James Razor brought to the table. He did have an injury, but he was a different type of prospect that we hadn't seen. And I think it was Brian Ferentz' last-ditch effort at finally having a decent quarterback. And I do think, given the proper training, perhaps he could have been developed, especially with a good quarterbacks coach like Tim Lester. But, they are the guys that make the big bucks. there's a good chance that Tim Lester thought he had no future at the quarterback position. Thus, he moved him to wide receiver, where he's more than athletic enough to play that position, especially with his size at 6'4". But a lot of people, a lot of recruits have such big egos, it's hard for them to see the initial attempt to make a change or implement a change, and then we see down the line they end up having those changes anyways. I mean, there's been multiple recruits or players that Iowa tries to change positions. They don't want to do it, then they go elsewhere. They end up changing positions anyways. I digress. So the room is completely different, and you fast forward to today. Iowa lands Hank Brown, and I think you can definitively say, although this is not the biggest get in the world, I think you can definitively say that the quarterback room is at least 2 notches better on a scale of 1 to 10. Or 1 to 5. I would say 2 out of 5 better than what it was going back to his beginning point as offense coordinator. Okay, before the season, after the end of the previous season. The room is already better. There's more talent. There's more arm talent. There's more depth. There's more diversity as far as skill set goes. Now, as for Hank Brown specifically, he is a bit more of a developmental long-term prospect. And I do think, for what it's worth, when Iowa rejoins, he will be the best young quarterback that Iowa has. He will be the future starting quarterback if Iowa doesn't, all things being equal, Iowa doesn't land any more young quarterbacks or anything like that. He will immediately be the most talented young quarterback that is a sophomore or below, an underclassman. Okay, which that is a good thing. And if you look at Hank Brown versus Marco Lainez, okay, I think Hank Brown is better and further ahead in his development than Marco Lainez. You also look at the fact that he was 6'4". He has game experience. He might not be as twitchy as Marco Lainez was, but from what I can tell, he can run if need be. Okay, I would say he's probably somewhere between Marco Lainez and like a Nate Stanley. Okay, he's probably somewhere in the middle, probably closer to Nate Stanley, but still faster than Nate Stanley. Okay, he will be able to escape every now and again when needed. But he is definitely a pocket passing quarterback. There were some throws that I saw him make that were dimes. Okay, they were throws that maybe in this past season I had only seen once, a handful of times on one hand from Iowa quarterbacks. And we're talking, dropping back 2-3 step drop and laying it right in the breadbasket over the shoulder for a 20, 30, 40 yard gainer. I saw at least 2 of those throws from Hank Brown. Okay, the kid has a nice arm. He's got arm talent. I'm not willing to say he has the biggest arm. I don't know that I would go as far to say that his arm is as big as like a CJ Beathard or maybe even a Nate Stanley, but it's a bigger arm than all of the Iowa quarterbacks that they had this past year. Brendan Sullivan, Jackson Stratton, and Cade McNamara. Although Jackson Stratton, it's hard to say because he was never asked to make a ton of deep throws. Okay, he was always asked to be more conservative. Okay, he made some nice throws. Also, one more thing on what I saw from his film, Hugh Freeze definitely runs a different type of offense. Okay, Hugh Freeze, and I like it. I do. I like the type of offense that Hugh Freeze runs. It's a very quick first read type passing offense where it's, there's one or two route concepts. It's getting the ball out quick, 5-6 yard gainers, quick outs, with exotic formations. There wasn't a ton of what we see from Iowa's passing game where there's a multiple wide receiver set. Not that there wasn't for Auburn, but Iowa does this consistently where there's a multiple wide receiver set and there's multiple reads, as that is a pro-style offense, okay? Hugh Freeze's offense was definitely more geared to the college level. Very quick first, maybe 2 progressions, if that, reads, getting the ball out quick and going. So I think that that's important to note. So on a scale of 1 to 5, if I were to, just to wrap this up, if I were to rate Iowa landing Hank Brown, I would currently give it a 3, maybe a 3.5 out of 5. It's a solid get. It's a good long-term option. And he immediately improves the quarterback room and will add competition to the room. Okay, a competitive spirit to the room. If need be, I do think he would be able to step in and give starting experience for Iowa. But make no mistake, Brennan Sullivan is still the guy, as of now, that will be the starting quarterback going into the year next year. Unless either of these two quarterbacks, either Jackson Stratton or Hank Brown, make substantial leaps, which is possible. And even then, I think that Iowa would still go with Brennan Sullivan, because that's how Kirk Ferentz kind of goes. He likes to stay loyal to guys who he views as earning it, which is fine. I'm okay with that to a certain extent. I think at times he goes overboard. So I would say 3.5 out of 5. And long term, all things being equal, Hank Brown will be the guy that is the next starting quarterback for the Iowa Hawkeyes. And that includes probably even Jackson Stratton, if Jackson Stratton is still on the roster. If Iowa doesn't land any more quarterbacks, which I'll talk about here momentarily, in this class, this transfer portal class, or the next one, Hank Brown, I think, will be the heir apparent to be the starting quarterback after Brendan Sullivan the following year. Now, last thing to discuss, is Iowa going after any other quarterbacks? Initially, in my Facebook post, I said no, but I wouldn't be surprised if what I said was, do I think that Iowa will land any other quarterbacks? Which is different from, do I think they're going to go after any other quarterbacks? And I said no. I'm still leaning towards that because I think it's going to be hard for Iowa to land anybody in the transfer portal that is better than Hank Brown. Let me put it to you that way. Iowa does have a lot to offer, as one of the articles I read said, and I do agree. They have a great fan base. They're a competitive program. They're one of the top, 8 programs in the Big Ten, if not top, 7. You could even make a case top 5 if you look the last 5 years. Okay. They have a lot to offer. I know a lot of fans, and I don't know why Iowa fans think this. It's absolutely absurd and ridiculous. I cannot stand when I see it. It's like Iowa fans saying that Iowa doesn't recruit the wide receiver room. It's like, do your own research. Stop listening and repeating what you hear other fans say. Do your own research. Okay, it's just not true. Iowa has money. Iowa has one of the best collectives in the entire Big Ten. Okay, most organized collectives in the Big Ten. Iowa has a great alumni base. There's a lot of money in Iowa football. Believe that. Okay, Iowa has one of the best fan bases, consistent fan bases over the last 20-25 years than any of the Big Ten programs. Not the best, but one of the best. There is money in Iowa football. Believe that. Could it be better? Of course. I've heard other people say that Iowa's former alumni football players who make it to the NFL don't give back to the University of Iowa. And you know what? Who knows? That might be true. I can't say for sure because I'm not the one that's seeing all of this money. But I do know from a logical perspective, just looking at the University of Iowa, looking at how the programs ran, looking at how many fans watch and consume Iowa football, they have money. Okay. They will continue to try and land another quarterback, but I don't think that Iowa will be willing to get a quarterback that is not better than Hank Brown. Okay. They might be willing to do it if it's a upper class quarterback that's a junior or a senior, but they're not going to get one that's young like Hank Brown. And overall, I would say the most probable thing is that they land, or the most probable motivation is to land a quarterback that's better than Hank Brown. Okay, not anything to do with Hank Brown. It's just Iowa has depth. The only thing missing is looking for somebody who could immediately come in and be better than any of the options that Iowa currently has. And there are a few guys that they're after. Okay, there's been a few names that they've been linked to. The former Oklahoma quarterback, the Miller Moss from USC, Jackson Arnold is the name. There's a few names out there. Okay, would I be surprised if Iowa lands another quarterback? No, I would not. But I think the most likely scenario or motivation is to land a high caliber quarterback. Just to wrap this up, because I'm gonna turn this into more of a transfer portal update video / Hank Brown video, just to give you guys some other names that Iowa is going after. Okay, let me get some of these tabs closed down here. And I've already talked to you about a few, but they've mentioned there's some new ones on the board. Defensive lineman, I believe he's mostly a D end, although at Iowa I think he'd probably be more like a D tackle with his size. Langdon Kitchen, who would I think he has 2 years of eligibility remaining. He's a D2 prospect. He's been linked to Iowa State as well. I think that would be a good pickup for Iowa, as it would give immediate depth and a guy with college experience. Iowa, and he's visited Iowa twice now. He visited Iowa with Hank Brown at the Iowa State game. Iowa is in on Central Michigan defensive tackle / edge Jonah Pace. I would have to look more at his stats. He's listed as an edge. He is 6'5". Both these guys have tremendous size, and you can see what Iowa's trying to do is they are trying to get legitimate guys that they can see legitimately competing at the Big Ten level. He's 6'5", 285 pounds. He had 19 solo tackles, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble. Again. And Iowa looks for guys that can play inside or outside, that have the athleticism and physique to play either, to have versatility. But of course, they do end up kind of having defensive linemen become more specific and specialized in the position that they play. I think both these guys could play on the outside, especially the strong side, but are likely more interior guys. Just externally looking at it. Iowa is after interior offensive lineman with 1 year of eligibility, Ethan Onianwa from Rice. This would be a big get. This would probably be the best transfer portal commitment that Iowa lands if they can land him. He is a 4-star and high 3-star, which is I think says a lot. As most transfer portals are not 4-star caliber. He would be the best offensive line guy that Iowa landed in the transfer portal, even ahead of Rusty Feth. and he's got good size, 6'5", 305 pounds, D1 experience. Iowa is after Trayvon Rudolph from Northern Illinois, high 3-star with a grade of an 87. And lastly, they are after 4-star, high 3-star Rayon Strader. They're currently favored to land Rayon, cornerback, and that would be a big get also. I haven't looked too much into his profile. I don't know how much eligibility he would have remaining, but that would be a good pickup for Iowa. 6 foot 160, according to On3. He's probably like at least 180 now. They're favored to land Trayvon Rudolph, who's also from this state of Illinois. They're also favored to land Ethan Onyenwa. And I think they're favored to land Jonah Pace as well. So if they could land at least 2 of these guys, it would be great. Preferably 2 or 3 of these guys. To me, the most important would be wide receiver. They need to add some depth there. Although I think that the wide receiver position going into next year is a bit underrated. Given the fact that pretty much all the wide receivers are returning next year. And I would like Iowa to land one of the defensive line prospects, and then it's kind of 50-50 between the O-lineman and the cornerback that they're after. I'd be good with either one. But you know, they're in a good spot for all of them, and I'm sure there's other names that are on the board as well. I think, as I told you guys, I think this could be the year that Iowa lands the most transfer portal prospects that they've landed. All right, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. We're at the 30-minute mark. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. Your boy has been giving you a lot of content lately. Let's get this channel to 2,000 subscribers. We're really getting there, and I appreciate all your guys' supports, even though I get comments every now and again from people saying that I'm just guessing back here. Yeah, I'm just guessing. Okay, pal. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. And last but not least, DBAP, don't be a pussy well on facts or feelings, because your feelings just don't matter. I love you, Hawk fans. See you guys next time. Go Hawks. Bye-bye.